What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 331. Welcome to the show. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts, and I'm here as always with
Ron
and John.
Good to see you guys. We have a bit of a packed show today. Pretty timely. We're talking about some new movies coming out today, some in theater, some in streaming, both in streaming in some form. And also we're going to recap the season of the Book of Boba Fett, which saw its finale come out this Wednesday on Disney Plus. Did you guys have anything you want to mention at the top of the show before we just jump right into this?
That I could think of. John, anything you thinking of?
I mean, no, nothing that can't wait, I guess.
Oh man, we're getting right to the races. This is
Ronald,
pretty exciting.
You're up.
Oh, well, guys. I saw the Kat Coiro directed movie Marry Me, starring Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson. That is coming out on Peacock, day and date. It's coming out in the theater Friday, coming out on Peacock Friday. And this was an emotional roller coaster. It was crazy. It was fun. And I expected it to be awful. Aaron just didn't like the premise at all. It just seemed like, why would a pop star just point in the crowd at someone with a "Marry Me" sign, which is the name of this artist's single, and decide to marry this person after being in, finding out right like 5 minutes before that her significant other, who is a very famous Latin artist, cheated on her. So it kind of follows the days and months that follow this berserk sort of thing. So it starts as like a small run, like, hey, let's do this for a month, and then it turns into 6 months. And it believe it or not, man, as corny as this premise is, it works somehow. Something about Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson's kind of cool, calm, collected teacher sort of vibe that he has in this movie. It works, man. It's fun. It's a fun fucking movie. And if you just kind of relax a little bit, it can be really very entertaining. I enjoyed it. And I think toward the end, Aaron wound up really enjoying it.
She came around on it, huh?
Yeah, she came around on it. I think we're just due for some silliness. And this delivers in premise and just the dynamic. There's something about Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson in this movie that really clicks. I wasn't expecting it. I'm not huge on Jennifer Lopez or her singing or her dancing, but I do acknowledge that she is in what many would say GOAT status in terms of the pop space, and there's something about seeing her do the things that she does in this, because she allows herself to be a little vulnerable. It works. I don't know. It's a fun movie. Fun watch.
I mean, it looks like super shiny and super crisp. The trailers I saw for it looked super. Every commercial was like, boy, that's like, that's like, it just looks so clean and crisp. And like, I don't know, it does look like it would have to be on the backs of the stars to make a premise like that work. Yeah. And I think, I was saying before we started recording that I don't really watch a lot of romantic comedies. I'm not averse to romantic plot lines in movies or movies that are dramatic and have a strong romance in them. I just think the particular genre of romantic comedy, where it does have sort of boxes that it has to tick, I just don't watch those that much. I do think there's a formula to them. And I think that if you are enjoying one, you're sort of enjoying the way that it plays with the formula. You kind of want the people to be somewhat together at the end. And so, that's kind of the destination of the movie. And so you kind of spend the rest of the time trying to figure out, how are they going to delay this? Are they going to, what are they going to do? And then it's also, if you said there's something about, and then you mentioned two super charming stars, and it's like, okay, at her best, J-Lo can be really great and charming. She's kind of stiff in some movies. Yeah. And then maybe you could say the same thing about Owen Wilson. And he's been kind of like, like going through the motions in some comedies, but when he really latches onto like a vibe of a character, he usually is super charming and laconic and laid back. So yeah, I could see that working. I did think this looked like one I would have skipped if I didn't have to watch it, But you said it kind of warmed you up, so I wonder if it would have done the same thing to me.
It's a comic book movie. That's even weirder. It is a graphic novel that got
it is
adapted into it. It is one of the best comic book movies I've seen outside of the MCU in quite some time. It's fucking weird to say that out loud. Marry Me is a graphic novel written by Bobby Crosby. You can find it anywhere. You can get it on, wherever digital comics are sold. Marry Me is a comic book movie starring Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson that somehow works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Works for Ronald.
Who knew?
That's like a new section on the show. Works for Ronald, and then you do that, and we have a little graphic.
Yeah.
It definitely, like, the trailer won me over. I mean, we were talking about it when we got the opportunity to screen it. It was like, who wants to check it out? And we were both like, I kind of want to see it.
Yeah.
But you basically have kind of reaffirmed what I hoped, which was, basically these two pretty charming, charismatic stars they work in the movie, which is like reassuring to hear, because I like, in general, like both of them, especially Owen Wilson. And seeing him in a rom-com again, and her, I mean, they both had runs of where they were in a bunch of these kinds of movies, and some of them work incredibly well. So it's cool to see them kind of going at it again, and definitely plan to check that out this weekend for sure. Probably on Peacock. I don't think I'm going to the theater, but I will definitely watch it if it's available on Peacock.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
On the rom-com train, the second movie that we actually, all three of us, got to see this week is it's going to be on Amazon Prime when this episode comes out on Friday, on the 11th. But this is the new film from Jason Orley, who we talked about briefly kind of earlier on in the pandemic. He had that film on, I think it was on Hulu. Was it Hulu? The Big Time Adolescence, with Pete Davidson. Yeah. Which I thought was great. Like I genuinely really liked that movie a lot. So it's funny to, see Pete Davidson have a small role in this movie too. But this is just, a rom-com that stars Jenny Slate and Charlie Day, who, again, two people I absolutely love, in their own worlds and in most of the things that they're in. To me, they're usually the thing that I walk out and be like, wow, he or she were great in that, even if the movie, really wasn't. And I think in general, I'm a huge fan of rom-coms, and we talked about it recently about some of these Netflix ones. Netflix kind of pumps these out, and there's some really great ones on that streaming platform, because it does feel like there is a bit of a void for these kinds of movies anymore in theaters. And this weekend is kind of an example. You have two fairly large movies that are, have pretty big stars in them, that are both going to be available on two different streaming services on the same weekend. But of the two, I probably was most interested in this, mainly because of Jenny and Charlie and Jason Orley, again, because I thought Big Time Adolescence was great. But yeah, this is going to be on Amazon Prime. This is something that I've seen both of them talk about quite a bit on Twitter over the past year. So it's cool to finally see it coming out. What did you guys think of I Want You Back?
Let you go first, John, since you just discovered the genre of rom-com.
Oh, this is my oblivion.
Yeah,
no, honestly,
John
I think we'd have, I don't know if we did an episode about rom-coms, but I know that we've talked about them enough in the past that we've talked about some of our favorites. I have moments. I think the Apartment is one of my favorites. I loved When Harry Met Sally for a long time. There were a couple of Woody Allen movies that I ranked as rom-coms that I don't know that I would revisit now, but I had my fun with them. I don't know. I think that there is a lot of room for really interesting comedies that have a romantic thread to them. So when I say that I don't really watch a lot of them, I just mean it's as a genre, I sort of feel like, unless I hear that one's particularly interesting, I'm not that prone to know. I don't know. I feel like Matthew McConaughey did a million of them, and Kate Hudson. There've just been so many actors who've done so many. And you mentioned Owen Wilson, and it's that you kind of like, but then it seems like then they do these other movies that there's the movies they do that I'm interested in, and then they do these other movies that feel kind of cookie cutter. So yeah, I don't seek them out, but I don't necessarily avoid them. And I'm not anti-love, Ronald. I want to stress that. I knew about love.
Oh yeah.
But it wasn't. I did not know about the
form.
I did not know about the genre called romantic comedies until I sat down to watch I Want You Back, starring Charlie Day and Jenny Slate. And I think that what I said before about believing you could be charmed by the stars and enjoying watching their chemistry, I thought that there was a lot of really, I don't know about likable acting in this movie. I just felt like there were I found myself thinking, what makes one of these movies work? And I was going to say to you guys, what the broader question of why do romantic comedies work? Like, why do they work on us when we see the formula coming and we know what they're going to do? But it's exactly that thing of if they can be clever about subverting it and keeping it going. And I think this movie, for one thing, it sounds almost like a reboot of or a remake of the movie Addicted to Love. Do you know that movie with Meg Ryan and Matthew Broderick? Where they are trying to break up their exes. I think their exes are actually together though, and so it's a little bit of a different thing, but it's still the same thing of two lovelorn people that can't get over their exes and are working with another lovelorn person to break up their exes. So I thought it was, I don't know, I think when I sat down to watch it, it gradually occurred to me that no, this isn't some like remake with a different name. It's actually a new movie. I Want You Back, movies named after songs. That's another thing romantic comedies seem to do a lot, is just pick a pop song that sounds kind of sweet and name it after that. But so it's like you don't get much from that premise or from that title necessarily, because there have been some pretty high concept romantic comedies. You just mentioned one, Ronald. So I don't know. I think it's just when you sit down to watch this movie, does it kind of get its hooks in you? And I thought it pretty immediately got me going with this. There's a couple of breakup scenes that are sort of cut in with each other. And I honestly started feeling it. The question, why do romantic comedies work? If they can get you up in your feels, I mean, one way or the other, breakups and makeups, we have strong feelings about them. We have memories about them. We can plug ourselves into these. We know when we would be the loser or the winner or whatever of that particular situation. So I thought this movie had a lot of that, a lot of moments that felt real and a lot of character beats that felt like they were at least trying to put a sort of a spin on this kind of thing where there aren't really any bad guys. There's a lot of different people that are caught up in this crazy mess. And I only think it really stretched credulity. There were a couple of points where a character in where the capers get so wacky. There's one thing that Charlie Day's character does about 2/3 of the way into the movie that feels like a major leap in terms of the kind of schemes that they're running, that I thought, I didn't know if I was quite there for it, but I thought the whole premise of what Jenny Slate's character is trying to do ultimately to mess that relationship up. I thought that was a really funny little plot line. And there's a scene where the women are dancing that I just found hilarious, because it's like, I don't know, I'll just say the threesome plot line was funny to me. So I don't know. I think this movie is full of moments where Jenny Slate and Gina Rodriguez and even Scott Eastwood and Charlie Day, where they just really make it work, where they really make me go, okay, I find this funny. And I find myself, I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody at the end of this movie. I was kind of rooting for everybody to escape with their dignity. So I enjoyed it. I thought the way that it played into the formula of a romantic comedy, it does do it, but it has a few turns that I wasn't exactly expecting the rhythms of this movie to be what they were. Yeah. So it kept me guessing. I guess I would say I thought it was pretty well made. Maybe you guys watch more romantic comedies. Maybe I'd throw to you, Steve, since you may watch more. How does this stack up? Am I right that this is a pretty decent one?
Yeah, I do think you're right. And I think it's probably one of the better ones I've seen recently. I think like mentioning the Netflix crop, it kind of puts some perspective for me, because I haven't really seen a whole lot of them recently that have been outside of Netflix. Like there was, the one that was on Hulu, it was more of a action adventure rom-com, the one with John Cena, the two couples.
That was
Vacation Friends, Vacation Buddies.
Yeah, or friends, whatever. Like that one was very good. Like I thought that was great, good. And like that stood out to me. So like there are these ones
too, though, that like really made it work.
That come out and they're just like, okay, well, like they're on streaming services, and I think it's because this genre really maybe doesn't have a place in a theater anymore. Like these are not the ones that people are going to pay to see in a theater. They'd rather maybe watch it in the comfort of their home with their loved ones, snacking out, relaxing at the end of a long day, which is exactly what we did to watch this movie, and it's just like, I think in comparison to some of these more recent ones, or even like Long Shot is probably the most recent in a theater one that I thought was like one of the best rom-coms I've seen in a long time, which I still think. And this one kind of felt like in that ballpark to me. Like, I feel like, it's very well made. The script is great. And I think that what it really does well is, like you mentioned just now, John, is like what it does. That's a little bit of a twist from a lot of the ones that you see that kind of like stand out in your memory, is that there really isn't a villain in the movie. There really isn't like the other character that's pulling one of them away from the other, or that's being that's distracting the one from seeing what's right in front of their face, or these kinds of tropes that the genre like kind of flexes on a lot. And not that hasn't been done before, but I think like when you have a cast as strong as this cast, and also to mention Manny Jacinto, from The Good Place, like
he's great.
They all just work so well together. And I think that they're the different kinds of actors that they are, the comedy styles that they all have. Like I think Charlie Day's like kind of manic rambling really pairs well with the way that Jenny Slate kind of approaches really awkward topics and awkward conversations in the movie. Even with her and like a kid, there's a scene with her and a kid in the car, which I thought that whole sequence was really great.
Yes, heartwarming.
But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like in some sequences, in some parts of the movie, it just seems like it's thinking about the genre and trying to not be one step ahead of your expectation, but just kind of deviate from it a little bit. Trying to pull in elements that feel a little more real and a little more even heightened at times, but like some things in real life feel out of this world when they're happening to you in certain situations, in relationships. Some things come out of left field and you're just like, I never expected that to happen. Like the scene that you mentioned, like the threesome scene, I thought was hilarious. Or the scene where, Charlie and Scott end up at the house and, the hot tub jump thing. Like I thought all that stuff was really funny. But yeah, I mean, I thought this movie was really good. I mean, like I actually would definitely recommend it. Especially if the people that we're talking about and you like seeing them in more movies, because they don't really do a whole lot of films,
That's true.
Kind of few and far between. I don't know the last one that Jenny did, but we talked about her a lot on the show, like back when Obvious Child came out and things like that. But which is why I'm excited to see Marry Me, because I mean, the two great possibly very good rom-coms in one weekend would be very encouraging to me. And it's like, it's just fun watching these movies, I think. And
yeah.
And I do think even talking about like kind of a bit of a, not a twist, but like, subverting what you expect, how these movies to end. I think the way this movie kind of handles the third act felt kind of a little inventive and just different enough to make it not seem like you could predict exactly how it ends. Like you can kind of get along and find the path to where we're going to end with these two characters, but getting there felt a little different, and the pacing was interesting. That like, the way the movie, like the final shot of the movie, I think is kind of fun. And
have you seen Nightmare Alley yet, Steve?
I haven't. No.
Okay. It's funny to see two such different movies that both end and at the exact right moment of lingering on like a face having an emotion. It's like acting is great, and great actors are fantastic to watch, and getting that moment purely from someone's expression. And even, well, I won't explain more, but even in the context of that is like expressions where we're only seeing part of someone's face. We've gotten used to that in life. So I feel like that was that felt prescient, even if they didn't know when they filmed that we'd be living in a masked world. But no, I think that it's interesting to hear you say all that. I really do think that the mark of a movie like this is do the filmmakers seem to have affection for the characters, and you can tell that they did. And you also could see like that the actors were bouncing off of each other in ways that felt a little bit more dynamic. Like you don't really want to see any of the relationships blow up that get formed in this movie. And that's why it's when like Gina Rodriguez and and Jenny Slate's characters, they don't really like each other at all, but like everyone else is sort of more or less okay with each other, but like those two, I just think it's a funny dynamic, because it's more about the Gina Rodriguez character's sort of like uptight nature, that she would be like, who is this person, that she would just never accept it. But I don't know. I thought that they answered the question. Like you said, you almost expect it to be this double thing where they're both trying to seduce the other person. And then they very quickly do away with that for a funny reason. And that's kind of a running gag in the movie, is like, which one of them seems like a more of a shoe-in to be a seducer versus the other. And, I thought the age differences were maybe bigger than they were. I looked up people and I was like, okay, there's not as huge of an age difference between Charlie Day and Jenny Slate as I thought. But he looks a little bit older maybe than he is, and she looks a little bit younger than she is, but she's 39 and he's 45. But I thought that was the only thing that bumped me right at first, was it seemed like there was a bit of an age gap there. But I don't think there's that big of an age gap. And I do think the movie plays into that too, of like the age, particularly his character's age and what he's doing going out and all that stuff. There was a lot of fun lot of fun stuff with, you know, it's fun to, and it's kind of sad sometimes to have to admit that these actors that you don't really think of as old or middle-aged, that they are now in that spot of, you know, if they're in a movie like this, that's part of their character, is that they're kind of aging out of partying. Ronald, you've been pretty quiet, but I've seen some nods. What do you think of I Want You Back?
I didn't really like it. I like all the actors, like their chemistry, but the script, there was more rom than com. I didn't laugh once watching the whole movie.
Oh, interesting.
Like at all. Like I didn't laugh at all. Like I just think that it just didn't work for me. But like I said, I think the actors, the chemistry with everybody, like I love Jenny Slate and I love Charlie Day, and I want to see them on something else. This wasn't it for me.
Any particular elements that bumped you?
All of it. It just wasn't a good movie to me. It was weird, man. From the beginning, the part that you're talking about to the end, I just was like, this is very forgettable to me. And I think because it was pitched as a rom-com and I didn't laugh at all. Even though, I mean, because I've seen those scenes before. I don't know. They're just so. Charlie Day and Jenny Slate are two of my. Jenny Slate, obvious child ever since then, and when she said "fuck" on SNL, has been one of my favorite people to watch. I don't see her in very much, and she was great in it, and so was Charlie Day, and I love Scott Eastwood and Gina Rodriguez, but it just didn't hit for me.
That's fair. That's totally.
But I
totally fine.
It's a movie that I would suggest to people that like Jenny Slate or Charlie Day. Like it's not. They're so good together. Like it's watching them on. If I could have a supercut of just them talking to each other, I'd watch that. Like just to show up them being friends, plotting on, like genius. You could tell that. I don't know. Jenny's like one of my favorite people.
No, and she's kind of amazing. I mean, she's like so good at like she's twisting. But I mean, and Charlie Day has his delivery style that he's got down pat too. And I can see how maybe if you just thought that again, like I said, not watching these that often, I didn't know if the formulaic beats, if they were working more for me because I don't watch them that much, or if this movie was kind of, as Steve said, kind of staying a little bit ahead of it. But I did think that the moments that I enjoyed the most were the moments where it felt like they were where their comic personas were kind of riffing off each other. So I actually found that stuff kind of funny, but it did sort of feel like, as Steve was saying, it was like setting her up to, like, he's going on rants and she's undercutting him by going like, maybe you need to tone it down, because she's really good at that stuff and he's really good at that sort of thing. So I just enjoyed seeing that. But if it doesn't break any new ground for you, then it definitely, it's mileage may vary with any of this stuff. So
I love them though. I love Charlie Day.
There's a spread.
I need to see them on screen again together. I was like, they have to do something again. Like there has to be something else that Charlie Day does in his world that she's in it, or vice versa. Like I love.
Yeah. Maybe there will. Maybe
that was not lost upon me how great they were together. So like, don't think that because I'm saying I didn't like the movie that I was like, I fucking loved. I was like, where are they at? I don't want to see Gina. Where are they at? I need to see them more. Right.
Yeah.
So that's my complaint, man. But it was,
You're saying you want to hang out with Jenny Slate and Charlie Day?
Yes. Yes.
I think we all do.
Yeah. That's relatable.
Absolutely.
So again, so that's on Amazon Prime today. 2 yays, 1 nay. Check it out. Maybe if you like the people involved, like Ronald said, even if it doesn't totally work, then there may be something there still for you. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the Book of Boba Fett now. We haven't really talked a whole lot about it on the podcast during its run, if at all.
I don't think we have.
Is this for good reason?
I think so. Man,
I think the timing is often strange because we will have just watched it that day when we record. Yeah. Here's a little peek behind the curtain, folks. We record on Wednesdays, and we don't always maybe have a confirmation that usually we plan what the episode is a day or so before that. And so we just haven't added it in. We've had maybe a couple of little conversations of, have you guys watched that, sort of, maybe. I don't know if we've had those on the show though, but I think at some point the word mediocre started getting tossed around, and we all sort of said, we'll talk about it when the season wraps up, because whatever you may like or even love about certain elements or episodes of this show, it really is maybe best taken in as now we see what that was. We see what all 7 episodes, what they
Right.
were building up to, because that's one thing they've started doing with these Star Wars shows, and the Marvel shows too are sort of guilty of this, of like, you got to wait around for the last couple episodes to really see what it's building up to. Like that, they seem to like that approach of the sort of all the money shots are in the last episode or two. And understandably, but it does make it a little bit like you can't dip out just because you're not feeling something, because you are like, well, I'm interested enough to find out what they have in store. And I don't know, I have mixed feelings about what they've done with the show overall, but I feel like I don't quite identify with the people that are just saying, oh, it's great, and I don't quite identify with the people that are acting like it's absolute trash either. So that's where I am with it, and I was really dying to talk to you guys because I think it would be awesome to unpack some of this Star Wars-y mess. What's Star Wars right now? What about you,
I don't
Ronald?
know, man. What do you
Tonally all over the place. Tonally all
All over
over
the
the
place.
place. Like all over the place. I think that's probably what bothered me the most. You know how like especially the first season of The Mandalorian, when they said like Robert Rodriguez did an episode. Oh, but this person did an episode. Did you know that this person? It didn't matter. The cool part was it felt very like tonally. Sure, they went to another place, and that place was a little more heightened because there was more killers there, and
Right.
the Mandalorian had to do more. But overall, tonally, it felt very cohesive, even if it shifted from time to time. This felt like different directors did different episodes because it felt like there was progress and then stop. There was progress and then stop, and then the last 3, obviously, come on. Some of the best Star Wars TV I've ever seen, but if it cuts the season in half, I can't go back and say that I liked the first half because the second half was good. But
Right.
overall, I mean, I can't ignore how great the last 3 episodes were. I cannot ignore it. I cannot ignore how fun as hell they were. So I'm kind of like John is. I'm kind of right in the middle, stuck in the middle with you, John. So I don't know. Steve, what do you think?
I mean, I definitely agree with what you're saying in terms of like, it's hard to say the last 2, 3. I would say maybe the 5 and 6 definitely, and some of 7 for me were like the better of everything I've seen. But like, yeah, it's hard to kind of like judge that and not feel like you're separating 2 different shows almost.
Yes.
Like, people joking about like, it's like the back half of the season is like almost like the Mandalorian 2.5 or something, which I don't think is really that far off. But I think in general, the show was okay for me. Like I guess I'm there with you guys. Like I definitely maybe I'm a little less on it because I don't really feel like I've really enjoyed the way the season ended as much as maybe you guys did.
Oh, I'm not one of those people that is particularly fond of the last few episodes of the season either. So my mixed bag. I liked earlier episodes of the season maybe more than some of the later ones, but I think there were moments in all the episodes that I was interested in. So you know what I mean? It wasn't like at any particular point that I walk away going, well, that was terrible. But I don't think I said that was great either about any of them, so.
I don't know. I just feel like, and I mean, that's something maybe I'm guilty of watching this show is that maybe I didn't want a full season of a Boba Fett show. I don't know. Like, maybe I didn't know that I didn't want that. I don't know that I even wanted more Boba Fett. I don't know. It's like I'm kind of being told what I want with where they're going with the show. And then as I'm watching it, I'm just like, I'm not really into the drawn out story of the in-betweens of Boba, and Boba and Mandalorian from the original, from where we saw him at, in the original trilogy. And I don't know that I cared a lot about that. I mean, like it was interesting at points, but like I definitely found myself identifying with like, I cared more about this season of this show called Boba Fett when the Mandalorian was involved personally. And that's because totally. I feel like the big thing that Star Wars maybe has done is shot themselves in the foot a little bit and making or finding so much success with the Mandalorian that I feel like it's doing this thing where like it's leaning a bit into legacy Star Wars and really kind of banking on this new age of Star Wars, and it's trying to marry those two ideas together, especially at the back end of the season. And some of that stuff works for me better than the earlier like parts of the season, you know, like but I feel like you really do get a sense that like you, like they at least where this and the Mandalorian and maybe even what happens with Rosario's show, like they really want those shows to kind of be their own little pocket of Star Wars in some way, you know, and you know they can crisscross into one another and exist together. But when you know you're kind of overshadowing a legacy character so much with the character that's been around for 3 years, like that's, I don't know. I mean, that's a win in some ways for Star Wars and Lucasfilm and Disney and everything, but it's also kind of like maybe not the biggest win when like people aren't so high on the star of the show, you know, or at least the title star of the show.
It's so weird. It's like that is this. I was trying to form a sentence. I mean, it's like everything you're saying, there's 19 topics we could unpack from it, you know, and talk about. Star Wars is so weird. The fact that this show is called The Book of Boba Fett, and it follows 2 seasons of a show called The Mandalorian, and that Mandalorian was a guy who looks like Boba Fett, but he's not Boba Fett, and we're not doing Boba Fett, we're doing Mandalorian. But then in the second season, we're going to bring in Boba Fett, and we're going to spin that off into a show called Book of Boba Fett, and then we're going to overshadow Boba Fett with the character The Mandalorian, but we're not giving you Mandalorian season 3 until the following year. And stuff that happened in this chunk of story from Boba Fett's show felt like Mandalorian stuff that I'd thought, I mean, I think we all thought maybe they were going to save some of that for Mandalorian season 3.
Right.
It's like, I think we all were happy to see Mandalorian show up. We were happy to see Grogu, but it was this weird thing for me of like, now I really don't know what this show was trying to do. Now I know people have said there's nothing weird about a show devoting a couple of episodes to sort of another character.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
But I'm thinking of like a 10 or 12 or 13 episode season where you get an episode or 2 that are like about a character. It's not usually where the season's kind of trucking along, and it almost feels like when they were planning this show, they got to a point where they were like, this is not as interesting as Grogu and Mando. We've got to get them back into the show. It felt just like a weird act of insecurity. I don't doubt that the story, if they had not called the show Book of Boba Fett, I've been debating like, what could they have called this show? Could they have had a show that was like an anthology show about people wearing Mandalorian armor? You know, could they have done like, could they have caught up with those other Mandalorians from Mandalorian season 2 and done like a couple of 2 or 3 episode arcs about these characters? I'm trying to think of how they could have done it that wouldn't have felt so strange, because I'm not trying to suggest that it blew me away and I couldn't follow it. It's just, I don't know what this show was, you know, like, I think that's the overall thing that is so sketchy about what you said it brilliantly, Steve. You didn't know if you wanted a show about Boba Fett. They just kind of told you did. I felt like we got enough Boba Fett in Mandalorian season 2. If he had come in and had like a couple episodes every season of that show, that's a great way to handle Boba Fett. I don't blame Tamura Morrison, the actor, and I certainly don't blame Fennec Shand. You know, those characters, they could be interesting, but they just did not have. There wasn't really a moment where they got to be like that dynamic or interesting as characters. They were, you know, and then some of the action, I really thought some of the action was embarrassingly bad in a couple of these episodes. And that was another thing I didn't expect from Star Wars. And I know every time I hear like Star Wars fans defending this show, they're always like, oh, Star Wars has always had bad action. Oh, Star Wars has always had stilted acting. And I'm like, I don't like that way of thinking about something, you know. That's like, I still think this show could rise to the occasion. We've said it a million times. We know what really good television looks like these days. And some of these, you know, franchise extensions, they're cool and fun, but they're not always actually that great as shows. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are moments I could point to that were like fun Star Warsy moments. I'm getting kind of sick of Tatooine. I'm getting kind of sick. I'm actually kind of sick of the Mandalorian armor at this point, you know, after all this. I'm still looking forward to Mandalorian season 3. And I think that they started off, this was a good prequel to Mandalorian season 3. And I don't begrudge, again, if we come back to the Boba Fett world, I don't begrudge them for wanting to do that. It's just, I had to squint really hard to decide that this show was really about anything, because I didn't really care. I wasn't emotionally invested in what Boba Fett's trying to do at all. It seemed like a bunch of criminals that are it's a criminal underworld of the Star Wars universe, but Star Wars has always had relatively one-dimensional villains. So it's not that interesting. It's not like the Sopranos of Star Wars, which I think is maybe what they were hoping it would feel like, or Deadwood of Star Wars. It's just
Right.
Star Wars. It doesn't have that kind of grit and I don't know, that kind of verve to it. So I don't know. I felt like there were a lot of missed opportunities to do something truly different. And did you guys feel like occasionally this was like a kiddie show, like the way the dialogue, particularly in Boba Fett and Fennec Shan's scenes, they would just kind of talk in this halting, over-explanatory way to each other that really felt like the show didn't have any faith in the audience at all.
There was something about it that just felt a little off. I don't know. I don't know. I think I won't have an opinion fully about this until the next season of Mandalorian starts. I don't know what this is in comparison to the Mandalorian. So I know I don't like it, but I need to see what Mandalorian is going to be. So I don't know.
Did any of those like character additions or anything like that? Like there's a character who shows up towards the end of the season, Cad Bane, that I saw a lot of fans of like the expanded universe stuff. That those people seem to like seeing that character pop up. But I don't have an association with it. So for me, this was just this first time I was seeing him, and he felt kind of cartoonish for the Star Wars. But I'm sure you could point to millions of cartoony Star Wars characters, but I mean, I thought he kind of worked, but the voice was a little over the top. And I think him showing up with that kind of cowboy hat on was, it was almost too on the nose, but it was fun to have that kind of like the promise of a villain showdown. So I don't know. I think some of that was fun, but did that character mean anything to you guys when he showed up?
No, I didn't really know what he was attached to or.
I feel like I've seen the character before, like in articles I've read, like images about like characters that should make it into the Star Wars universe, cinematically. And that's my only reference, though. I'm not familiar with I guess it was in Rebels or Clone Wars or somewhere in those is where the character's from. But no, kind of like a new thing for me watching that, which I thought was I agree. Like this idea of a villain showdown type deal was interesting, but yeah, I don't know. Like I just keep coming back, like in more and more people I talk to about it, like that have seen the finale. It feels just so lukewarm to me. It's just so, and maybe it was never meant to be more than that. I don't know. Maybe it's like a placeholder kind of thing, while other stuff is, Obi-Wan is coming out in May, and there's all the Andor apparently is rumored to already get picked up for a second season. Like these things that are happening, maybe there are other things being built out more that are bigger scope, that are going to be outside of like what's happening with Mandalorian. Obviously, in terms of timeline, some of them would have to be, but like, I think it may have just been like a little bit more of what we think you like, and we'll give you even some of the character that we know you like in this story of a character from 40 years ago that we thought you wanted more of. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like it feels weird to me that the show is so reliant on, especially in the back half of the show, on the new characters, pretty much across the board on the new characters, and Boba kind of, with the exception of like the second half of the finale, really kind of felt like he was kind of in the background a lot. But I don't know.
Before we wrap it up, I have one kind of spoilery question. So if you haven't listened at this point, that we've spoiled certain things. But there's one thing that they do get to. We do get more Luke. We get more de-aged Luke in this season. And I just kind of wondered what you guys thought of, because I came away from that episode being really annoyed by him and thinking he was like a weird creep. And I think the show wanted me to feel that way. I still think there was something kind of off about the execution of that, but I do think the show is wanting us to realize that what Luke was proposing was sort of wrongheaded and sort of reminiscent of what the Jedi Order, the whole premise that they needed to, the old system needed to go. Like Luke was kind of saying that old shit about like cutting all ties and stuff. And it seems like he would know better than that. I didn't know what you guys thought of the depiction of Luke. And do you think it was deliberate that he came off as kind of Like he's like this weird creep saying, no, I'm the only one who can walk around in the woods with you, Grogu, and say, jump, try to jump. You know, like, I don't know why Mando couldn't be part of that. It felt so strange and weird. And then the way he handled the gift was like the lamest move, or just a very uncool move, I should say. Saying like, yeah, I'll give him the gift that you brought. And then saying, hey, kid, you want this gift? Or do you want this other really cool gift that I got for you?
Yeah, it felt divisive. It felt like he was definitely trying to like jump him into a gang and, you know, La Costa Nostra. You know, it just felt very like, I didn't like that part about it. Although Luke looked physically better in that episode than I had ever seen him look. Like when he appeared last season of Mandalorian, like, yeah. I don't know what they did, the jump in technology between then and now, but he looked amazing.
They hired that YouTube deep faker. No, they did for real.
They did. No, I know the guy who like after they.
You're talking about the guy who Cruise guy?
Well, the guy who after they put the footage out, he like fixed it to make it look better. They hired him.
Oh,
isn't that the guy?
Yes, I can't remember his name. I was like reading all about it.
Yeah. I thought the only thing is that it was eerily still. That's the only thing that was weird about, because even when Mark Hamill does eerily calm Luke, he's still a little bit more lively of an actor than that. But I mean, if as far as serving the purpose of in a story, do you believe this is a living, breathing person? He's interacting with a little green puppet, so it kind of helps. It's funny that like in the old in Empire Strikes Back, Mark Hamill being such an emotive actor is what made the Yoda puppet so believable. And now a Yoda puppet is making a CGI Mark Hamill feel believable because we believe Grogu exists, you know? So we're like, I guess that's Luke talking to him. But yeah, I think we're meant to see that as deliberate, but I still came away from that episode going like, I almost wondering if it was intentional. And I have to say, I'm not that interested in the Ahsoka show. Maybe something will come up between now and then that'll get me interested, but her character, it felt like that was, I don't know, that felt like such a weird appearance. I'll tell you what I loved the part of that when it was Mandalorian hanging out with R2-D2 and those droids building a temple, and Mandalorian was going like, is anybody here?
Any humans here?
I could have believed that was all we were going to get, and I would have thought that was a fun little story because it just feels fun to picture him like going like, is there anybody that can talk? You know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think they're trying to do a lot, and I kind of feel like this reluctance to get away from Luke Skywalker is maybe one of the bigger problems of Star Wars, that I thought that Mandalorian was supposed to represent that, and now they're kind of using him as like a stunt. But you could believe they've relatively resolved it. Do you think at the end of this season it seems to imply we know what Grogu's choice was and that's that? Or do you think we're going to have computer face Luke popping up all the time?
I said the decision was made. I don't know.
I think narratively, you're supposed to believe that the decision was made. I don't know that means they're going to get away from more Luke Skywalker. I do agree just quickly that it did feel to me like that was more of an intentional like put off, you know, in the way that he was approaching his Jedi training and like, you know, his first student and things like that, trying to be so steadfast to like the old Jedi principles. And obviously would, you know, you can, you know, connect the dots in terms of the new trilogy, in terms of how that ended up and ways in which that changed in his efforts. But just for the VFX, like I thought that it looked amazing personally.
Yeah.
And I felt like you obviously see the limitations of the technology still, like when there's a lot of mouth movement and a lot of dialogue. Like I think there was a couple like minute markers that I wrote down last week to discuss before we decided to kind of hold off on this. But it was like moments where like you could just the mouth movement just did not match the dialogue like very well at all. But you know, and that's a given limitation of even deep fakes, you know, like of these things that they're trying to make happen. And you know, even some of the Carrie Fisher stuff and the Peter O'Toole stuff, like it's just not Peter O'Toole. Who else was that? Who was
Peter Cushing,
sorry. And you know, that's consistent there. So I don't know how far off that is, but I think on the whole, this is one of the better ones I feel like I've ever seen in terms of the ability to really kind of like have a stand-in actor that kind of sort of looks like Mark Hamill, and then have this deep fake of Mark Hamill on top of it. Like I thought it worked really well, especially when there's especially when there's no dialogue happening, and I would say probably half of the dialogue works, but some of it, especially some of the more close shots, are where you can really see it. And they intentionally stay away from that, which is why there's only a couple times it really stood out to me. There's a lot of over the shoulder shots when there's dialogue. There's a lot of blocking when there's dialogue to mask that intentionally. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like watching that versus the end of season 2 of Mandalorian, I thought was a pretty big improvement personally.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely looked better.
It's so smooth.
I still think that when you know an actor's movements and style so much, it's hard. It's like that's it's bumping me in that way. But as far as is it an improvement over that? Yes, it definitely has gotten better. And that technology has gradually just gotten better in general. You'll still see moments where it looks really weird, where they're like, there's a stunt man who's got a face digitally placed on him and it looks really funny if you freeze frame on it. But in general, I think, it's gotten pretty amazing what they can do.
Crazy.
So it's only because I know Mark Hamill's every pore from examining the Star Wars films 1,000 times as a kid that I will never accept computer face Luke. But as a device in a story, can I kind of squint my eyes and go, all right, this is a story and Luke's in it and this is how they chose to do it. Yes, I can do that. Star Wars has always had effects that you have to sort of embrace or not if you're going to enjoy it. So
cool. So I guess the next time we'll see Obi-Wan when it comes out. They announced the date today when we were recording, I think, didn't they?
Yes, the 25th of May.
May
I was
25th,
already today to say no Star Wars for a little while, and then they announced a date like while I was writing that note down, and I was like, no, they heard me. They heard my thoughts. But I'm still interested because of the cast and the storyline. But the picture on the poster, it looks like Obi-Wan on fucking Tatooine. So I guess we're gonna get some more Tatooine. I mean, honestly, I know there are people who say, hey, Star Wars has always had Tatooine, get over it. And it's like, okay, whatever. But to me, that's a thing that George Lucas used to pointedly try to do, was like create these new worlds and show you new worlds. Right. And I think it's been a while since I've seen like a cool new Star Wars world. The movies were usually pretty good. Even the sequel trilogy, they were good at throwing some kind of landscape you haven't seen before at you, but that was totally lacking. And I don't expect Boba Fett set on Tatooine to have that, but I'd like to get away from that look and that feel. We'll have to see, but I'm interested. Ewan McGregor getting a chance to do this character again. That's the appeal for me. And maybe even Hayden Christensen getting a chance to kind of try to do something too. I think both of those actors have every right, but Ewan McGregor, we have more proof that it's going to be, it's going to be good. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up the recap for Book of Boba Fett season 1. I don't know if there's going to be a season 2. It didn't say that at the end.
I'd be so surprised if there is one.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be just more Boba and Mandalorian probably. Cool. Well, I don't really have anything else to mention having seen this week. Did you guys want to mention anything quickly before we wrap up?
Nothing I can think of.
Okay. John, anything?
Just that I finally caught up on the Righteous Gemstones, and Sunday's episode was a big one. So the way
it's a very big one. Yep.
Left something I really want to see the follow up to. If they really did what they seemed to do, that's a major thing that just happened. That show's really got its, when you finally catch up on a show you've been meaning to, I was able to really give some time to that. And I really think that there's some fantastic comedy acting on that show, but there's also a real intensity to it that feels like it goes a little bit beyond what you normally expect from a comedy. So like just
we'll have to recap that once it wraps up.
I would start mentioning people, but the whole cast, you just start listing everybody. But really, it's like anybody it's one of those shows where when somebody gets in the orbit and gets to do something on that show, they do something interesting, even if it's only for an episode or a couple scenes or whatever. So like Eric Roberts is great on it, for instance.
Cool. So recapping, Marry Me in theaters and on Peacock.
That's one yay.
Yep. Yeah. And 2 NAs. I Want You Back is on Amazon Prime. 2 yays, 1 nay, and then
Book of Boba Fett down. So we.
Yeah. Book of Boba Fett just wrapped up on Disney Plus. If you haven't checked it out, the episodes are all up there for you. We're all kind of in this little middle, area for that one. Cool. Well, that'll do it. Movieschmovie.com is the website. You can go there, find a link to all of the podcast platforms we're available on. Also to our YouTube page. If you'd like to subscribe, if you're watching this video, you should just click the subscribe button while you're at it and just make sure you get notified with notification button also turned on for when new episodes come out. I don't know what next week's episode will be yet. I don't think we've decided that yet. It'll be a little bit of a mystery, I guess, between now and 7 days from now. But we will be back hopefully next week with an episode, and we'll talk to you then, I guess. You guys have anything else you want to say? We're good to go. All right, cool.
Yes.
Well, as always, yeah, the answer is yes. As always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.